Okay, what is up there, YouTube? This is J-Man Time, and today I have another video on some warships, on rare warships of the Second World War, and today's video is going to be on Thai battleships and cruisers and coastal defense ships of Thailand, known during the Second World War as the Kingdom of Siam, or Siam for short. Now, during World War II, the Thai Navy didn't really have any battleships, but they did have some heavy coastal defense ships that were kind of used in the same role as a battleship, and they also had several other heavy coastal defense ships that were used by the Royal Thai Navy, or the Royal Siamese Navy as it was known during the Second World War. So let's go over the capital ships of the Thai Navy during the Second World War. And the first class of warship on the list is the Donburi Class of coastal defense ships, sometimes known as coastal battleships in the West. The Donburi Class consisted of two warships, the Sri Aitya and the Donburi herself, and these two warships had a displacement of 2,301 tons. Their main armament was four 203mm 8-inch 50 caliber main guns. Their secondary armament was four 76.2mm 3-inch third year type secondary guns, and their third line armament was four 40mm Bofors L-60 anti-aircraft autocannons. These ships had an armor thickness of between 38 and 100 millimeters, and they had a speed of 15.5 knots or 28.7 kilometers per hour or 17.8 miles per hour, and had a crew of 155. Both the Donburi and Sri Ayutthaya were constructed between 1936 and 1938. These ships were known for their usage during the early part of the Second World War, largely between Thailand and France, and what was known as the Franco-Thai War of 1940 through 1941. But the most notable action was that of the HMS Donburi's use during the Battle of Ko-Chang on the 17th of January 1941, in which the Donburi actually faced a French light cruiser, the Lamont Piquot, a light cruiser from the Vichy French Navy that was constructed in 1923. Now, after the fall of France in mid-May and June 1940, the French army, later the entire country of France, was converted a German puppet state known as Vichy France. Now, Vichy France still had control over the territory around Thailand known as French Indochina, and these territories were French Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Now, in October 1940, Thailand actually took the fall of France as a way to get revenge on the French. Now, back in the late 19th century, France actually tried to annex Thailand, just like they annexed Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam between the 1870s and early 1890s. And so, for Thailand, France's defeat in the Second World War was the perfect opportunity in order to kick the French out of Indochina. So in October 1940, the Thai military began small offensives against the French Indochinese Army, or the French Indochina Army, based in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. And these skirmishes lasted until the 9th of May 1941, where the Imperial Japanese Army later stepped in and forced both sides to accept a ceasefire. But later on, at the end of 1941, Japan would go on to annex both Vichy French Indochina, the whole, incorporating it into the Greater Japanese Empire. Now, during the Battle of Ko-Chang, on the 17th of January 1941, the Royal Thai Navy, which consisted, or a Royal Thai Navy escort or flotilla consisting of the HMS Donburi, along with two torpedo boats and a small number of aircraft, were actually attacked by the French Navy, consisting of one light cruiser, four avisos, and 9 naval aircraft. At the end of this battle, the French light cruiser was damaged, one French aircraft was lost, but the Thai Navy suffered a huge defeat during this battle, which resulted in a strategic victory for the French. During the battle, the HMS Donburi, the coastal defense ship, was actually grounded after being damaged by the French warships, and 2 of her escorting torpedo boats were also sunk in combat with the French light cruiser, thus ending the Battle of Ko-Chang on the 17th of January, 1941. Now, after the annexation of both French Indochina, the Thai Navy didn't really do much during the Second World War after this point, and was mostly used as an outpost for the Japanese Navy, or the Japanese fleet. Some Japanese warships were stationed in Thailand, but most of the Imperial Japanese Navy operated outside of Thailand, and the Thai Navy didn't really do much during the Second World War, as Thailand really didn't want to be involved in this greater conflict. Now, after World War II, both the Donburi and Sri Arthya didn't really see much service after the Second World War, and between the 1940s and 1960s and 70s, they were mostly used as guard ships, although the HMS Sri Arthya was later used as a flagship for the Thai Navy. In 1951, there was actually a rebellion in Thailand known as the Mahajan Rebellion, and during this rebellion, the Sri Arthya was actually damaged and eventually sank on July the 1st, 1951, thus putting her out of service. She was later raised and scrapped in 1959, thus ending her service history. The Donburi, on the other hand, went on to serve up until the 1960s and 70s, but eventually she too was decommissioned and was partially scrapped, with some of her fittings, mostly her main armament, her superstructure, and many of her deck fittings being turned into a monument for the Thai Navy of the First and Second World War, although these ships only served in the Second World War. And that basically ends the history of the Donburi Class. These were 2 coastal defense ships that were sometimes considered battleships. The next class of Thailandese coastal defense ships from the Second World War were the Rattanako class of armored gunboats, or armored coastal defense ships, that were constructed between 1924 and 1928. This class consisted of 2 gunboats, the Rattanako Sendro herself and her sister ship Sukhoi Thai. These ships were constructed by the British Armstrong Company in Elswick between 1924 and 1928, and these vessels had a displacement of 1,000 tons. Their main armaments were 2 152mm 6.1-inch 50 caliber main guns, and their secondary armament was 4 76.2mm EOC 40 caliber secondary guns. These gunboats had an armor thickness of 32 to 57 millimeters, and they had a speed of 12 knots or 22.2 kilometers per hour or 13.8 miles per hour, and they had a crew of 102. Now, these ships were originally ordered back in 1914, but World War I broke out, and the British didn't have time to construct any warships for the Royal Siamese Navy, later renamed the Royal Thailandese Navy, and as a result, these vessels just weren't constructed until the mid-1920s. Now, these ships are sometimes mistaken as traditional coastal defense ships or coastal battleships, but in reality, these are heavy armored gunboats that were constructed to defend the Thailandese coastline, along with the later Donburi class of coastal defense ships / coastal battleships. Now, during the Second World War, these ships really didn't do much. Their main job was to defend the coast of Thailand from potential invasion. So during World War II, these ships didn't really do much. They also didn't participate in the Battle of Ko-Chang, which was the largest naval engagement in Thai history at that point. So these ships really didn't do much, really. But they were some interesting warships. Now, after World War II, these ships also served as guard ships, just like the Donburi class. But in the 1960s, the late 60s, 1967 and 1971, respectively, these ships were eventually scrapped during that time period. And that basically ends the history of the Rataneko class of armored coastal defense gunboats. They are some rather interesting warships. It's kind of a shame that the Thailandese Navy didn't really do much with them, but then again, during the Second World War, Thailand did want to remain neutral. The only reason they fought a war with France was to simply kick the European colonialists out of Asia. That was basically it. That basically ends the history of this class of armored gunboats. And the last class of heavy warship to be used by the Royal Siamese/Thailandese Navy during the Second World War was the Tarkin Class of armored sloops of war, which were constructed between 1936 and 1937. The Tarkin Class, or Tarkin Class as it's sometimes referred to as, consisted of 2 warships, the HMS Tarkin and her sister ship Mae Klong. These ships were constructed in Yokosuka, Japan between 1936 and 1937. These vessels had a displacement of 1,422 tons. Their main armament was 4 120mm, 4.7-inch, 45 caliber Type 3 Shiki main guns. Their secondary armament was 2 20mm Breda/65 anti-aircraft autocannons, and they were also fitted with 4 450mm Italian-made torpedo tubes, and they were also fitted with an aircraft crane that could hold 1 Watanabe WS-130 seaplane, and they also had racks for upwards to 20 to 40 naval mines. And these ships were pretty much some of the last of the heavy warships to enter service in the Thai Navy. Keep in mind, the Siamese/Thailandese Navy of the Second World War mostly consisted of torpedo boats and small gunboats. The Donburi, Rataneko Sendra, and the Tarkin Class or Tarkin Class were the only real heavy warships. The Thailandese Navy did have one training vessel, but it was just an old decommissioned British warship. So let's go back into the Tarkin Class. Now, these ships entered service between 1937 and 1938, and during the Second World War, they served during the Franco-Thai War portion of the Second World War between October 1940 and 1941. These ships didn't actually take part in the Battle of Ko-Chang, but they were used in the defense of Thailand itself, just in case the French were planning to use their warships to show Thailandese coastal defenses, which they actually did try to do several times with their small number of light cruisers and Visos and corvettes that were operating with the French fleet during the Franco-Thai War of 1940 from 1941. Just like the other ships on this list, after the Franco-Thai War, the Royal Thai Navy didn't really do much after 1941. Thailand was actually bombed several times by the British Royal Air Force, or the RAF. Now, on January the 6th, 1945, the HMS Tarkin herself was actually damaged, or badly damaged, during one of these air raids by a squadron of British RAF B-24 bombers while she was stationed at the Thai Naval Yard at Shatat Hip. On the 6th of January 1945, after being bombed, the ship was basically abandoned. She was never repaired, and after World War II, she was later sold for scrap. Her sister ship Mae Klong actually stayed in service up until the year 1995, and during that time period, she was modernized at least 3 or 4 times. By 1995, she was pretty much too old for service, and she was later decommissioned and converted into a museum ship where she can still be seen at a Thai naval memorial in the city of Samut Prakan. And that basically ends the history of the Tarkin or Tarkin class of Tarkin class. And that basically ends the history of the Tarkin or Tarkin class of armored sloop of war that was used by the Royal Thai Navy during the Second World War. Now, there were actually two other class of warships used by the Thai Navy, or one class of warship used by the Thai Navy or Siamese Navy, and one class of warships that were actually ordered by the Thai Navy, but were later taken back by the country of origin. The first ship is the Chao Phraya from 1939. This was originally a British sloop known as HMS Heaven, and she was built in 1919 and later sold to Thailand sometime between 1923 and 1939. But she was disarmed and she served in the Royal Thai Navy up until 1971, where she was eventually sold for scrap. In 1939, the Royal Siamese Navy, or the Royal Thai Navy, also ordered a class of light cruisers from Italy, and these were given the name the Tarkin Class, or Tarkin Class of light cruisers, and these were to be constructed by the Italian CRDA company based in Trieste. And these ships were actually constructed between 1939 and 1942, but unfortunately, they were later confiscated by Italy in 1942, and these ships were to be named the Taksin and the Nersan. These two vessels were later renamed the Etna and the Vesuvio in the Italian Navy, and they were eventually sunk during the Second World War when Italy eventually surrendered and switched sides. So these ships were originally built for the Royal Thai Navy, but they were ultimately confiscated by the Italians and later served in the Italian Navy. So that's basically it. These were the only heavy warships to serve in the Royal Siamese Navy or the Royal Thai Navy during the Second World War. If I had to pick my favorite of these ships, I would actually say the Ratanako Sentra class is actually my favorite of these ships because of how strange they look, although they didn't really have much of a combat history outside of serving during the Franco-Thai War in 1940 and 1941. So what do you all think of these warships? Please tell me in the comment section below, and until next time, this was J-Man Time, signing off.